In today's episode, we take a look at dealer Gary Collins, whose decomposing body was found in woods in December 1983. The first part will be the reconstruction, and the second part will be the police investigation.
Now, a story about one man and his dog. It's a mystery story that ends up with both man and dog being attacked and stabbed to death in a wood in Sussex. As the story unfolds, you may feel that you have rather little sympathy for the man. He was a drugs dealer, and one that cheated his customers at that. But the police are particularly anxious to catch the killer. It looks like what's at stake here may be a drugs ring whose members are prepared to kill to get their way. The trail starts at a seaside town. Hastings is a quiet south coast resort with pleasure craft and fishing boats and a tradition of smuggling that goes back generations. The modern contraband is drugs, and for those that want it, there's anonymity in a town that's used to having visitors, and there are good connections to London and beyond. 5 months ago, these men discovered how deadly some of those connections are. Near Brightling, 12 miles from Hastings, there's an aerial ropeway that links a gypsum mine and its processing works. For 3 months, there'd been something lying, decomposing and undetected in the undergrowth.
What you got there? What you found? Leave. Get away. Hey! Easy.
Gary Collins was barely recognisable. He'd been 25, tall, with dark curly hair. He and the dog had been beaten and stabbed repeatedly. Gary had always lived in Hastings, a fit young man, a sportsman. He'd been living with his girlfriend, and the two of them had been saving up to buy a house. Gary and his Alsatian collie Trudy had gone missing 2 weeks before Christmas. The last time they were seen alive was when they left their rented flat in St Thomas's Road in Hastings. It's 10 o'clock on the morning of the 12th of December last year. A neighbour saw him leave. Gary Collins should have gone to work that day, but didn't. He had a part-time job packing eggs, but police now know Gary had been running a little business of his own. He started by selling small amounts of cannabis to friends, but then to an ever-growing market. He was known to customers and dealers as the man with the dog. The two of them had been frequent visitors to London in the year before they died. Several of Gary's associates have helped police to build up a picture of his growing trade in drugs. So far, Gary's movements have been traced to North and West London in particular. He's known to have met contacts in Camden, Islington and Kensington. And it's clear his drugs dealing involved double dealing too. Two people, a former partner in crime of his and one of Gary's former cannabis suppliers, have given matching descriptions of an incident that shows the dangerous and devious game Gary was involved in. The drug supplier was to meet them at Victoria.
Get it all?
Yeah, fine.
I'll put this in the boot. Yeah.
You got a fag?
You have one of these, you want?
Where's he gone?
So I made a phone call on it.
Have you got the money then?
Well, he'd give it to you just now, didn't he?
You bastards.
By then, it was too late. Gary's accomplice vanished with the drugs, and Gary just drove off. Gary's deals were also growing more ambitious. Through Interpol, police have traced a grand scheme for smuggling cocaine through Brussels and Amsterdam, financed by exporting illegal amphetamines to Stockholm. Shocked by Gary's murder, another dealer at the time explains how Gary was now playing in a bigger league.
He was known as the dealer, the man with the BMW and the dog. He would have been an easy target to any of the other type of gangsters that are just looking plainly to rip people off. You know, I mean, they'll sort of promise the earth, and all they want is to rip off everything. They'll even come up with the hash, and you'll come up with the money, and they'll take both.
What happened in the last few hours of Gary's life is still not known. Remember, it's Monday morning, 2 weeks before Christmas. Someone drove his grey BMW to Battle railway station. The station staff saw it there at noon. The rest is speculation. Except for one thing. Whoever took the car there took the trouble to turn it round in the narrow car park to face the exit. Perhaps Gary drove it there himself. Maybe he'd arranged to meet a contact there. Curiously, though Gary was meticulous about his BMW, the car was left unlocked. Maybe there was an unexpected change of plan. Or maybe Gary met someone at Battle Station from a London or Hastings train, and perhaps they drove off together, and the car was later taken back there after Gary's death. Or maybe Gary never went to Battle Station. The car was simply dumped there after he was killed. Whatever happened at the station, somehow, presumably with someone, Gary went to the secluded woods by the gypsum mine near Breitling. With him, as almost always, was his dog. Somewhere he changed into Wellingtons from the light brown moccasins he'd been wearing when he'd left the flat. The moccasins are an important clue. They haven't yet been found. It's fairly certain from forensic evidence that Gary was alive when he arrived at the woods near Breitling.
Come on. Come on.
Maybe he was forced there. Maybe he was going to retrieve some hidden drugs or money. On Monday, December the 12th last year, Gary Collins and Trudy went on their last walk together.
Come back. Birdie. Trudy, come back.
Well, you might see something about the death of Gary Collins in the papers tomorrow, because today an inquest at Hastings into his death recorded a verdict of unlawful killing. Superintendent Clements, it's obviously a very difficult case for you, because people who've been dealing in drugs, people who've been buying cannabis, are most unlikely to come forward as witnesses.
That's true. We've considered the matter so serious that we've granted an amnesty against anybody that has had any drug dealings with Gary Collins, in the hope that they'll come forward and give us information or evidence that may help us trace the person responsible for Gary's death.
To be candid, even though you say you've got an amnesty, I can imagine people watching who may have known Gary, may have, say, bought cannabis from him, don't think they can solve the murder and will be very reluctant, particularly if they don't have a record, to get on police files.
Well, I can quite definitely say that anyone that comes forward and gives details about dealings they've had with Gary can feel absolutely certain nothing will happen. We have plenty of statements from people who've had dealings with Gary, statements which could have landed them into very serious trouble, but we've taken no notice of this because we're after a particularly vicious criminal who's killed this man in a most savage manner.
The man in the silhouette?
That's right.
Who helped us, what's happened to him? Have you taken action against him?
No, not at all.
And if people want to ring anonymously, will you listen to their information?
Absolutely. Obviously, the best information is from persons who give their name and address, but anyone who wants to ring anonymously, we should be more than pleased to hear what they've got to say, Mr. Ross.
Now, if people do ring in, what is it that you want to know? What sort of people do you want to reach?
We want to hear from people that have known Gary, especially in drug stealing, anybody that might have seen him when he arrived at Battle Railway Station on the 12th of December, or perhaps even out at Brightling Wood. People that might have been on holiday, that just happened to be passing and didn't even know that a murder had been committed.
The date, of course, 2 weeks before Christmas, the 12th of December,
That's
wasn't
right.
it? So you really want anybody who knew Gary, did drug stealing, but knew him at any stage and may know nothing about the murder?
Well, if they think they can help us at all, we would be more than pleased to hear from them.
Have you got hold of everyone you want in particular? Are there any people you know of out there that haven't yet come forward?
There is a lady, a blonde woman, in a brown coat that has been seen by a green Toledo, that has been seen with Gary on the A21, which is the battle to the main London road, on at least 2 occasions, and on one occasion which she was with 2 men who carried grey disposable bags. And I would like to say, Mr. Ross, that there is also, of course, a reward of £5,000 offered by Mr. Collins Sr., Gary's father, for any information that leads to the arrest and conviction of the persons responsible for Gary's death.
Bill Clements, thank you very much indeed. Right, again, the numbers, remember there's an amnesty, remember whatever you think about cannabis or other drugs, we're looking for a murderer and a man who could strike again. Call us here please, 01 811 8055. You can talk to civilians if you prefer, or you can call Sussex Police direct.
25-year-old drug dealer Gary Collins was discovered stabbed and beaten to death in woods at Brightling near Battle. Gary was barely recognisable, being found with a fractured skull, 5 stab wounds in the back, and his throat had been cut. His decomposed body was found in woods near a gypsum mine. Detectives believe it may have been a contract killing related to drug smuggling. Collins had disappeared from his home at St Thomas Road, Hastings, on the 12th of December 1983, 3 months before his body was found. His unlocked grey BMW car was found abandoned at Battle Railway Station. Also, the body of his crossbred collie Trudy, who had been stabbed through the heart, was found in the same woods. Police think he may have been forced from the vehicle or led into the woods on the pretext of a drug deal. Police were running out of leads. You see, Gary never grew up in the criminal fraternity, so he was not a known name. He was an egg packer who sold weed to mates, and then that grew, where demand was so strong, he quit his job and started dealing full time. A Crime Watch Reconstruction was released much later in August 1984, and looked increasingly promising. Though the callers remained anonymous, they mentioned how he ripped off a courier to a local gang. It was something that Gary wouldn't most likely do, but he may have been a broker or middleman, caught up in a deal that had gone wrong. It was discovered that he changed from his moccasins into a pair of Wellington boots prior to his death. His moccasins were never found, and their whereabouts are an important clue to the investigation. Forensic evidence suggested that Gary was alive when he went into the woods. Was he forced there, or was he retrieving some hidden drugs or money? Information had come through that Gary had started making international contacts. It looked as though he was about to move into the big time, from local dealer to a drugs kingpin. A murder squad detective in March 2000 described the case as a jigsaw puzzle with one missing key piece, where then they'll add that one name where everything would fall into place. Police inquiries were carried out in Greater London, where many of his drug deals were made, and in virtually every county in the country, but to no avail. At one point, Sussex police asked the FBI to question several people from Kent who were in custody in America on drugs charges. Gary Collins was found with a fractured skull, 5 stab wounds in the back, and his throat had been cut. Detectives believe it may have been a contract killing by a female assassin. Police sought the whereabouts of a blonde woman in a brown coat and a green Triumph Toledo, seen with Gary on the A21 Battle to London Road on at least 2 occasions. The same woman was seen on another occasion with 2 men who were carrying 2 grey disposable bin bags. The woman in the green Toledo has never been located. The murder to this day remains unsolved, with Sussex police revisiting the case. But as the years go by, it looks like the murder of Gary Collins may never be solved.